Warm welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to our viewers in North America and around the globe. My name is Mike Embley. Our top stories. A victory for Catalonia's separatists. Latest results show them winning a majority in the regional assembly. 1 million cases of cholera and 80% of people without clean water. We have a special report from the war in Yemen. The UN General Assembly overwhelmingly votes to reject Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And the Florida police officer dragged for half a mile by a suspect he was trying to arrest. Hello. Separatist parties that favour independence from Spain have won an absolute majority in regional elections in Catalonia. Turnout was at a record high and the vote hands a mandate back to the region's ousted separatist leaders, many of whom campaigned from exile or behind bars. It is a major setback for the Spanish Prime Minister, who called this election in response to October's disputed referendum. He'd stripped the previous regional government of its authority. With almost all votes counted, the pro-independence bloc is on course to win 70 seats out of 135, 57 going to parties favouring the union with Spain. From his self-imposed exile in Brussels, the former separatist leader, Carles Puigdemont, hailed the result as a victory for democracy.
We ask for the restoration of democracy in Catalonia, a restoration of the legitimate government and the freedom of those who have been put in jail. They should not spend a minute in prison. They should come out now, and the legitimate government must return to the palace of the Generalitat. This is our place. This is the will of our citizens.
That's the view from the pro-independence side. Parties supporting unity with Spain rather differently. Here's Inés Arrimadas from the Citizens Party.
For the first time in Catalonia, a constitutionalist party has won the elections in Catalonia, and it has been Ciudadanos. For the first time, 1,100,000 Catalan men and women have picked up the orange paper.
Liz Castro is a writer and independence activist in Barcelona. She told me the result sends a clear message.
The Catalan independence parties have proven once again that the people would like this issue to move forward. And it delivered an incredible blow to the Partido Popular, the party of the ruling party in Spain, which went from only 8.5% of the vote in Catalonia to only 4%. They're down to 3 members of parliament. It was a clear, message that said, don't send your police to beat up our voters again.
It is clearly a major setback for the ruling party, and yet they've handled this with a pretty heavy hand up to now. Why do you think it will be different in the future?
I don't know that it will be different in the future, but I'm hoping that the continued democratic, nonviolent insistence that this is the will of the Catalan people will finally make them listen. In a democracy, when people vote, that result has to be listened to. It has to be the will of the people. Like the President Puigdemont was saying, the people have spoken, so now it's time to listen to them. It was Spain who decided that they wanted to have these elections. These were illegal elections. The Spanish government did not have the power to call elections in Catalonia. It did not have the power to depose the president or to dissolve the parliament. It clearly overstepped its boundaries using Article 155 for these permanent measures when it's only supposed to be for temporary measures. And it backfired. It clearly backfired.
So what do you think the choice is for the government, negotiating or essentially cancelling democracy?
Well, I would hope that in 21st century Europe that they would negotiate, that they would listen to the people. I mean, the real problem at the Catalan situation from the very beginning is that Spain refuses to listen. No point in this entire process has the Spanish government ever just said, gee, what's the matter? What's going on? What's the problem? Why can't we get along? They never have done that. They've never said, why do you want to be independent? They simply say, no, 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 we don't care, and shut up. And if you try to go vote, we're going to beat you up with batons and with tear gas. That's not the way a 21st century European democracy should act.
And yet, really, for Mariano Rajoy, I guess there are no votes in the rest of Spain. Him, are there in giving independence to Catalonia, and only problems actually in the rest of the country?
Well, that's true. It's true that the rest of Spain doesn't want Catalonia to be independent, but it's not for the rest of Spain to decide. According to the UN Charter for Human Rights, every nation has a right to station, including Catalonia, and it's Catalonia who should be deciding what its future should be. And for Mariano Rajoy to use Catalonia as an electoral tool to get more votes in the rest, and clearly sacrificing them in Catalonia, doesn't say a lot for his ideas about democracy.
Independence activist Liz Castro there. Let's quickly round up some more of the main news for you. 2 men have been arrested in Australia after a car was driven into a crowd. Health issues and drug use. A Ukrainian government interpreter who visited and met Theresa May has been arrested in Kiev and accused of being a Russian spy. It's reported Stanislav Yezhov had been under surveillance for several months and was present at numerous high-level meetings. The US Vice President Mike Pence has made a surprise visit to Afghanistan. He told troops Washington will deliver on its commitments. In August, President Trump promised a small increase in American troop levels in Afghanistan, but attacks by the Taliban and the extremist group, the so-called Islamic State, have continued. The United Nations General Assembly has overwhelmingly backed a resolution effectively calling on the United States to withdraw its recognition of Jerusalem as capital of Israel. 128 countries voted to reject Donald Trump's recent announcement. 9 voted against and 35 abstained. The resolution is non-binding but a strong expression of opinion. Mr. Trump had threatened to cut American aid to countries that backed it, and his ambassador warned there would be consequences for nations challenging the new U.S. policy.
We will remember it when we are called upon to once again make the world's largest contribution to the United Nations. And we will remember it when so many countries come calling on us, as they so often do, to pay even more and to use our influence for their benefit. America will put our embassy in Jerusalem. That is what the American people want us to do. And it is the right thing to do.
Nikki Haley there. Warren David Miller is from the Woodrow Wilson Center think tank. He's a former Middle East advisor in both Republican and Democratic administrations. He told me many countries did not vote at all.
No, there were, I think, a record number of abstentions. 35, 8 or 9 voted against. Look, you can bean count, which I think the administration has a stake in doing because I think they want to put their diplomacy in the best possible light, or if you look at the broader picture, and the broader picture tells me, and again, I've worked for Republicans and Democrats and voted for Republicans and Democrats. I think this was a significant blow to American credibility. I think it undermined the prospects of bilateral diplomacy in which the Trump administration has placed very little faith. And I think it makes an already fraught pursuit of Israeli-Palestinian peace that much more difficult. The reality is nothing that has occurred. Last Wednesday, with the president's declaration, the vote in the Security Council on today's session at the UN, nothing is going to fundamentally and positively the situation on the ground between Israelis and Palestinians. They're left in a grim conflict, and I think the United States is, in terms of its own role, has been made much more difficult.
So there really was no peace process to speak of anyway, and diplomatically you think all of this has very little effect?
I do, and I think in large part, I think particularly in Europe, there's a profound misunderstanding of what motivates the Trump administration. When it comes to the inflection point between policy, politics, and diplomacy, the administration president in particular shows a preternatural tendency to choose politics. If you look at the withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the withdrawal from Paris Climate, the 3 travel bans, the wall, immigration restrictions, and now symbolic but consequential that the U.S. Embassy at some point we will open an embassy in Jerusalem, which the Trump administration has declared the capital of the state of Israel. All of this was driven by the need to assuage, pacify, and expand a political base. I think the administration frankly revels in the conflict at the UN. It's popular amongst constituency. The president ran on an anti-UN platform. Multilateral diplomacy means very little to them. And remember, of the 15 permanent and non-permanent members of the Security Council, only one of them votes in the United States.
Aaron David Miller there. 1 million people in Yemen are suffering from a cholera outbreak that, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross, is one of the world's worst in a decade. The humanitarian crisis has left more than 80% of the population with little access to food or clean water. Our correspondent, Nawala Magafi, is in the capital, Sana'a. She sent this report. You may find it distressing.
This is 11-month-old Abdel Ilah. Exhausted and beyond despair, he's just one of starving children. With his belly swollen from malnutrition, there are 400,000 other infants suffering just like him. Once confined to rural areas, the threat of famine has now reached the capital. Abdel Ilah's mother Jamila sits helpless at his side. She's already lost 2 other children to hunger. She tells me he's all she has to live for.
My husband's salary used to provide for us. It would run out at the end of the month, but he would get paid. Everything was okay. Now we eat is bread and tea.
All the infants here were born into this war now in its 3rd year. From birth, it's a struggle to survive. 8-year-old Ala has just arrived, and he's just been given his first proper meal in days. He's from a family with a well-paid government job, but for over a year, anyone working for the state hasn't received a salary. So the family quickly fell into poverty. Too ashamed to ask their own family for help, they struggled in silence.
I break one piece of bread between 2 children, and another is shared out between the rest. That's all we have. At night they ask for dinner. They cry, but I can't give them anything, so they sleep hungry.
It's really heartbreaking. In Yemeni culture, it's shameful to go out and ask for help. And I'm shocked that Jamila waited till her son was in this state before she asked her sister for money to bring him here. It makes me wonder how many more people are starving in their homes. And here's the incredible thing. Whilst millions of people are starving across the country, supermarket shelves in the capital are stocked high with food. But ordinary Yemenis can no longer afford to shop here. A once busy store, now empty. 2/3 of the population don't know where their next meal is coming from and are totally dependent on aid to survive.
This milk used to cost $15. Now it is $25. The people only come here to look at the food. They can no longer eat it.
On the streets of Sana'a, you can see the toll the fighting has had on the city. Burnt buildings, homes in ruins. The war in Yemen has had an impact on all aspects of life. The coalition airstrikes, the fighting on the ground, has left people here living in fear. The country is more divided than ever, and people are too afraid to speak their mind. But it's not the bombs and the bullets that are claiming the most lives. It's a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Much of the problem lies here. The Saudi-led coalition has blocked all commercial imports from main ports, which has driven up the prices. Yesterday, the blockade was lifted for the next 30 days. But the Houthi rebels are impeding what little aid is being delivered. Everyone here is now struggling. All government workers are now trying to feed their families without any income. Mohammed has been teaching for over a year without pay. He says his family goes hungry, but he couldn't live with him if he didn't turn up to lessons.
If they don't pay us our salaries and the situation doesn't change, it will be a catastrophe for teachers, for the people. Already the middle class has completely disappeared.
The UN says Yemen is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. But according to its resident coordinator, the international community isn't doing enough to stop the war.
There is a glaring lack of pressure beyond the words. There's been words come out of the US, there's words come out of Europe, there's words coming out of the UK and everywhere else, but it's not translated into a pushback on this action. And the only solution is political. So the political people have to get around this table and take a real, full-hearted approach at fixing this.
With the lack of international diplomacy and the war at a stalemate, those at the brunt of the suffering are the vulnerable. Nawal Al-Makhafi, BBC News, Sana'a.
A tough watch, but a story worth telling. Stay with us on BBC News if you can. Much more to come, including this. It's 3 months since Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. Now the islands are preparing for Christmas amid the wreckage.
We saw this enormous tidal wave approaching the beach, and people started to run, and suddenly it was complete chaos.
United States troops have been trying to overthrow the dictatorship of General Manuel Noriega. The Pentagon said the operation had been...
Flag was hoisted over what is now no longer the Soviet Union, but the Commonwealth of Independent States.
Over the cockpit of Pan Am's Maid of the Seas, nose down in the soft earth. You could see what happens when a plane 8 stories high, a football pitch wide, falls from 30,000 feet.
Christmas has returned to Albania after a communist ban lasting more than 20 years. Thousands went in the town of Shkodra, where there were anti-communist riots 10 days ago.
Very glad to have you with us on BBC News. The latest headlines this hour. Separate parties that favour independence from Spain have won an majority in regional elections in Catalonia. The International Committee of the Red Cross says the cholera epidemic in Yemen has now reached 1 million suspected cases. The United Nations has warned that more Syrian people are dying in eastern Ghouta because the Assad government is blocking humanitarian workers from reaching those who need life-saving medical help. A special advisor to the UN envoy for Syria, Jan Egeland, says that since the start of December, aid agencies have not been able to reach any civilians in the besieged area. The UN has asked the Syrian government for a humanitarian corridor to transport people who need medical help from the rebel-held area into Damascus.
In December, we haven't reached a single soul. All our attempts have gone in vain. We haven't gotten permission from the government or from the parties concerned to go to a single besieged area so far in December. So we're ending with month. 494 people were on the list for priority lists for medical evacuations. That number is going down, not because we're evacuating people, but because they are dying.
Jan Egeland there. There's been much more effort at repatriation since the news of migrants in Libya. The International Organization for Migration has brought back about 14,000 migrants to their various countries and hopes to increase that number to 15,000 next year. Many of the migrants have been recounting terrible experiences in Libya. In Ghana, the BBC's Thomas Nadi met one returnee, 30 years old, who had been sold as a slave in Libya.
A taste of freedom back home in Ghana. After many months of detention in Libya, 30-year-old Abubakar Ahmed left for Libya in 2016 in search of greener pastures. But he faced the exact opposite. He had paid traffickers to facilitate his movement to Libya through the desert. But he was captured, tortured, and sold as a slave.
The Agadez driver sold me. So they just beating us every day. I spent almost 3 months in that. So it's easy. We are just facing problems over there. Some people are dying. So if you didn't pay money, the way you do to you, it's not easy. So he will give you a number in Ghana, his wife's number in Ghana. So you call your mother and give the number to your mother, and your mother will send mobile money to his wife, that guy. He told me that I should pay the money. So I called my mom, and my mom at that not feeling well. So she said she have some taxi. She sold the taxi and some of his property. She said she sell it and send the money to that Kofi, his wife.
The government, with support from the International Organization for Migration, has helped repatriate over 300 migrants. The IOM is also helping to reintegrate the returnees into society. Sylvia Lopez is the organization's representative in Ghana.
We will be working with government agencies, but also with other development partners and NGOs on the ground, connecting them to educational opportunities. Vocational training is extremely important, connecting them with livelihood options.
A recent study shows that 4 in 10 Ghanaians want to migrate in search of better economic opportunities. The young people in this country traveling to Libya is not new. But the biggest concern is that the horrific treatment of their brothers deter most of them from. The government has promised to create more jobs to stop young Ghanaians from leaving the country. But until that is done, people like Ahmed will continue making the dangerous journeys to Libya. Thomas Nadi, BBC News, Accra.
It's 3 months now since Hurricane Maria slammed into the island of Puerto Rico. It was the most powerful storm to hit the American territory in the best part of a century. The BBC's Tim Ormond reports on how the people of Puerto Rico are trying to cope with their first Christmas since the hurricane hit.
Jenny and Jose Luis are celebrating the festive period as best they can. Decorating the tree in a house with no electricity, this Christmas is going to be hard.
We still don't have power. Even 3 months after the hurricane, we're living without light. We're living off a generator. We're making do with little battery-powered decorations. Puerto Ricans are very family-oriented, and we like to celebrate everything.
A sentiment shared by the pupils and staff at Loesa Cordero del Rosario High School in the southwestern city of Yauco. They're staging a magic Christmas celebration to try and lift local spirits. Their motto, as bad as things may be, you must still have hope.
With this natural disaster that occurred, we see a lot of people who are sad it's over, who don't have a vision for what is to come. And here we want to let them know that we are blessed.
This was the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Maria. At the station, dozens of lives lost. According to local officials, 30% of the island is still without power, and hundreds are living in shelters. It's been a tough few months for Puerto Rico, but Christmas is coming, and to celebrate with tinsel, with their families, and with hope for the future. Tim, BBC News.
Now, this is quite something. A Florida policeman has been dragged for more than half a mile, clinging to a car door. He tried to search a driver who was suspected of taking drugs. Despite falling off at high speed, the officer was unharmed, and the whole incident was filmed on his body camera. Andrew Plant has the story. Now, this is...
A police officer in Florida pulling on protective gloves. This car pulled over with 2 suspects inside. The officer has spotted what he believes could be heroin and needles and is about to search the vehicle.
I just have it as Sandville Recreation Building Mike.
But the driver has other ideas.
3-4, it's going to be in front of Cambridge and Mike. Whoa, 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 whoa!
Clinging to the open door and with 1 foot in the car, he's hurtled along at high speed. Despite his shouts, the driver shows no sign of slowing down. For the officer, this unexpected ride is only ending one way. Amazingly, the officer gets back on his feet, the suspect's now long gone, but the video camera is still recording.
You are a hero. Awesome.
The Pembroke Pines police force later posted this footage on Facebook. The officer somehow unharmed.
So basically I got a call off 2 people sleeping in a car. I got there. When I got there, I saw heroin and syringes everywhere.
And with the evidence they need to pursue these dangerous drivers.
You got the camera.
Good job.
All captured on camera. Andrew Plant, BBC News.
Wow. Before we go, we cannot do a bulletin these days without a Brexit story. Britain's going to get a new passport in 2019 when it leaves the European Union. The UK government has announced it's going back to the old-style dark blue and gold hardback passport that British citizens carried abroad before the introduction of the pan-European style burgundy design in 1988. That is to say, the new passport will reflect Britain's new sovereignty. Those in favour of leaving the EU had campaigned for it to be reintroduced. The government says changing the colour will not add to the cost, and the new document will replace the old when they're renewed post-Brexit. Much more for you on all the news anytime on the BBC website, and you can reach me and most of the team on Twitter. I'm at BBC Mike Embley. Thank you very much for watching. Come again.